We received hundreds of work from all over the world, and we show it on our website, Adforum, and we show it, and we placed it in main media, which gave us some space. And then we did our first exhibition here in Cannes called Still Shining New York. Since then, we've come every single year showing great work, some of the best social and environmental campaigns done by the advertising community to support causes and so on. And so, doing this, we are showing that the advertising community is playing its part, it's adding its voice, it's playing its role into today's major world issue. And today, the major world issue is very simple. The future of our planet, the future of our children, our future. Are we going to stay on the side and wait till others, the powerful, the governments, do something about it? Do we think we cannot have our voice, our role to play? Let me tell you a story that happened to me in Africa recently. I was on a safari with a group of people from various parts of the world, and we were watching a group of lions. And you know, lions sleep during the day. So people were not really happy. So they said, why don't we go out in the car?
Thank you very much. And thank you, Hervé. And he has told you how it all began. And I'm happy to be here today with you in time. And of course, for Jones will tell about the work he and his team and Kate have done. And I think we are all going to be very grateful to him and the team. My dear friends, let me start by thanking you for joining us this morning for the launch of the Take Time for Climate Change campaign. This is, I believe, a vitally important initiative to mobilize people around the world to demand climate justice. We have no time to waste. For climate change is not a threat in the distant future, but already it's a threat that is damaging lives of millions of people in every corner of the world every day. And time is running out too, because this December, the world leaders must act. They must act decisively to combat climate change and help those countries and people adapt to the changes already underway. We need urgent action on two fronts: a reduction in global carbon emissions and the provision of funds to support adaptation. The consequences, if they fail or delay at Copenhagen, are potentially catastrophic. So the next 6 months is absolutely critical. They demand, as we will do through this campaign, a collective effort to help give our leaders the vision and courage to rise to the challenge in front of them. David Jones will in a minute talk about the actual mechanics of the campaign. I look forward to hearing a few words from my good friend Bob Geldorf, and of course he will do this in his inimitable, forthright style, which is very effective and communicates effectively. We can't afford to hold punches. There is no time to wait. There's too much at stake. Climate change is the greatest humanitarian challenge that mankind has faced. It is a challenge as well which has a great injustice at its heart. For the countries and people suffering the worst impact of climate change right now and in the future are those who have done least to cause it. It is the major developed economies of the world which contribute to the overwhelming majority of global greenhouse emissions. But it is the poor. It is the poorer and least developed nations that are and will be hit hardest by its impact. For some countries and communities, the consequences of climate change are truly catastrophic and frightening. I have just come from Geneva, where we heard from President Anote Don of the Republic of Kiribati, telling us how rising sea levels threaten the very existence of his country. And I quote, he said, "We will all have to leave our islands. We thought we had a century to think about this, but the time frame is becoming an shorter, and the clock is ticking across the world." As the important report last month, which was issued by the Global Humanitarian Forum on the line, the more severe and frequent droughts, storms, and floods brought about by climate change are already affecting millions of people. All of this is happening against a background of growing global population that is consuming more and more of the world's finite resources. The availability of agricultural land and supplies of fresh water are already being adversely affected. As the pace of change accelerates, the social, political, and security challenges will worsen, and impact on every corner of the globe will be felt. It is why it is no good apportioning blame, pointing fingers, or pretending action can be limited to some countries or some regions. Climate change will affect every one of us, and we must all respond. We must all take responsibility. A failure to recognize this truth could be one of the costliest mistakes we make. So too would be a failure to recognize the urgency of action. Copenhagen presents a truly historic opportunity to agree the steps this crisis demands. The agreement must be global, it must be fair, and it must be binding. It must be based on climate justice. At both businesses and country level, it has to put the polluter pays principle into practice to fund mitigation and adaptation measures. And it must help unleash the creativity and innovation without which we simply cannot meet the challenge. That is why the involvement of the private sector is so vital. Political leaders can and must set a framework, but we can't leave it to them alone. They cannot do it alone. And so without the creativity, energy, and experience gathered in this room and around the world to come up with practical solutions, and you as individuals also have individual decisions, consumers, as individual decisions, you help influence what should be manufactured, what we should buy, and how the companies change their practices. We are all in this together. We all have a role to play. And that's why, despite the scale and urgency of the challenge, there is no room for pessimism, let alone fatalism. Climate change is the byproduct of humankind's ingenuity and drive to improve our lives. This same capacity for innovation and commitment can now help us deal with these unintended but disastrous consequences of our actions. We have the knowledge and we have the resources. What has been missing up to now is the vision, courage, and political will to tackle climate change in a way which spreads prosperity and creates opportunities for all. I remain confident that working together, we can provide climate justice and create a fairer, better world. I hope and believe that Tick campaign, no, Tick campaign that we are launching here today can decisively move us towards that goal. I'm asking all of you to support this campaign, to mobilize individuals and businesses around the world to demand climate justice and ensure an effective agreement in Copenhagen. We need our voices to be heard loud and clear, but I'm not asking you to do that only for today. Today, every day, every month, to Copenhagen and beyond. And Copenhagen is only the beginning. It could be a turning point. But much work remains to be done after Copenhagen. And we need to stay engaged to save our planet. Millions of people across the world and future generations are depending on us to succeed. We cannot fail them. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I just believe that what our industry is actually fantastic at is changing people's behaviour. And obviously what we do on a day-to-day basis is we kind of get people to buy product A rather than product B. But I think, not only do we have an opportunity, but we actually have an obligation to use that talent and to use our creativity to change people's behaviour around some of the really big issues that we're facing in the world. And that was why when Kofi invited us in and asked us to put together what we call Kofi's campaign, we clearly jumped at the opportunity. So what I'm going to do over the next 20 minutes is kind of share with you 12 months worth of work. Before I do, I want to do a quick interactive questionnaire. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and if you can put your hand up in response to them. So the first question is, put your hand up if you're worried and concerned about climate change and its impact on the future of the planet. So that's pretty much 100% of the people. And the second question is, put your hand up, if you could you do something about it? Please raise your hand. It's because Kofi's watching it. Now, you've fallen right into my trap, because what we're here to do today is to ask for your help, and there are some very specific and tangible ways that you can actually help, and so I'll share these with you. What we've basically done is we've designed a campaign that is completely open source. So all of the assets are going to be on the website, and we'll talk to you about how consumers, how advertisers, how advertising agencies, and how the media can actually get involved in what they can do to take this campaign out there. And the great news about it, particularly in the recessionary environment in which we live, is that it's free. Very specific and focused campaign objective. And if you say to people around the world today, what's Copenhagen? Most people will say to you, it's a small city in Denmark. Now that's absolutely correct, but obviously it's something much more important than that this year. You know, Copenhagen is the new Kyoto, and if we don't reach good agreements in Copenhagen this year, then the impact of that on the future of the world is going to be enormous. So our campaign objective is really simple. The world's political leaders will react to what they think is important to the world's people. So what we want to do is we want to put pressure on them to go to Copenhagen and reach a really powerful and just climate deal. That's a single-minded objective. Now, digital language, so we've dropped the I, so TCK, TCK, TCK. And this is the device that we want to go everywhere. I'll explain to you a little bit more about that. It looks like a dog tag, and there is a dog tag that goes with it. You'll see we're all wearing them. Kofi has basically named 100 of his closest climate allies, and there are 100 of these that are free, and each download is basically a signature on a digital petition. So hopefully, and we're talking with all the world's media about getting this out there as a free download on the...
Climate change is having a real impact on the lives of individuals and communities around the world. We must do something about it. How can we demonstrate
has come.
The time has come.
The time has come.
The time has come.
The time has come.
So that's the campaign track. And just a quick call out to the guys from the Hours of the record label who put all that together and have a ton of work still to do over the next 2 months, but they've done a great job. The second to Cannes, this is the reason for it, and this is the big call out, is what we basically want to do is we want advertisers to use this and run it on their TV commercials, their print advertising, their websites. They can do that for free, they're already going to be running their ads, and it's just a way of showing that they endorse the campaign and raising awareness around Copenhagen and TIC. It's kind of like, everyone knows the Lance Armstrong yellow wristband. This is sort of the corporate equivalent of it. And what we've done is we've produced it in a range of tasteful colours, so no matter what your company's look, feel, identity and colourway, we have a colour to match, and as I said, all of the assets for this are on the website, and it's completely free. And I think consumers are looking more and more today for companies to stand for more than just profit, for companies to be socially responsible, and it's a very easy way of demonstrating that. I'm really pleased to announce that some people are already on board, so EDF, Europe's biggest electricity company, they're on board, and this is how they're going to use it on their TV commercial. So I'll just show you an example of how TIC works on the end frame of that. This is the TV commercial we produced for them last year.
It's not that easy being free.
Climate change is real.
Having to spend each day away.
Therefore, they can't solve
By 2020, EDF Energy aim to reduce the intensity of CO2 emissions from their electricity production by 60%.
Oh, that's the idea. Making good use of that rubbish.
EDF Energy. We save today, we save tomorrow.
Have made a mess of things, bequeathing to the next generation a world that faces a very real and serious threat of extinction.
When you try your best but you don't succeed. When you feel so tired but you can't sleep. Stop giving up. When you lose something you can't replace. Could it be why?
Let's forget you. Time is running out. Join us as partners in the Global Alliance for Climate Justice. I will try to fix you.
This is sort of ad aid we're doing. I have to say that I was profoundly suspicious when I got a call from what I call was an organisation called Hamas Worldwide. And I thought, that's cool. I decided to go read. Asking the ad industry to act responsibly is sort of like asking birds going to shag someone older than 18. And I'm not making it. This is important. You've heard the... I know Kofi a long time, I'm glad to say, and it's a skill not to let the emotional content creep into what you have to say, because there may be people who have a different perspective to you. That's what he was bred to do, almost career-wise. That's not my job. And it isn't the job of the ad industry. As David said, our job, if I can include myself, you Mob, for a little bit, is to try and make people see it and feel it, more importantly. And so while Kofi told us the political reality of where we based down where Hervé told you how we got to this point, and while David has explained how we go further to Copenhagen, I should tell you the bald facts behind what it is everyone who leaves this room now is going to set out to do. They're compelling and they're frightening. And before I do that, I want to offer my great condolences to Michael Jackson's family on his death. He was one of the greatest musicians we've ever seen, and I miss that very much indeed already. But what made me think about it was because in 1985, I called Michael to do one of these things that David is doing now, the collective record. And I knew that what we did with Band Aid in Britain was not enough, that we had to engage the Americans. And he and Quincy and Lionel went and did USA for Africa. And boy, did it work. An entirely disinterested continent who knew very little about Africa became engaged. And right now there are 2.6 million Americans daily accessing the one website, of course, which eventually came out of all this journey of 25 years. That's the new aspect, the one that David spent some time explaining to you, which you know intuitively and professionally. But 25 years ago, I became aware of this thing now called climate change. I knew it was desertification. And I saw it in 1984. Now, why I'm here is not just simply because of our old friendship and the stuff we do together, Kofi and I. I'm here because the issue of poverty and development and climate change are precisely one and the same thing and cannot be divorced from each other. Except that development in our part of the world will stop and the poverty will become ours. So, what you saw is true, but I'm telling you a further truth, that everything you saw there will be us. We all know the culture of Easter Island. We know the great stones that were erected, seemingly meaninglessly. Well, for Easter Islanders, it was status. It was theology. But the only way they could build these stones was to lever them into place like Stonehenge with great trunks of trees. It's a small island. Gradually they cut the trees down to one last copse, the last 20 trees. The animals had died. There was nowhere for them to gather food, there was nowhere to shelter. The humans were about to die. What did the Easter Islanders do at that critical existential moment? They cut the fucking trees down. We're all Easter Islanders. We're all on our last 20 trees. And if you don't believe this, let me just read out the facts that lie behind your emotional sense that something's going awry. The facts that lie behind a feel-good campaign that, in my view, David, is not hard enough because there's 1,000 multilateral meetings. I'm off to the G8 next week, fruitlessly yet again. will be in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, wherever the G20 is, and these must be the lead up to Copenhagen, which cannot be the diplomatese that this man so eloquently and powerfully speaks. It must be tangible, immediate, and real political change. And this is why. The warming trend of the past 50 years is nearly twice that of the past 100 years. CO2 now exceeds the natural range of the past 650,000 years. It now exceeds, CO2 emissions, now exceed the Earth's natural capacity to absorb these emissions in the oceans, in the rainforests, in the vegetation, by a factor of between 10 and 50. Not just a little disability in absorbing this, but by a factor of 10 to 50. Now, today, here in this hall. The Earth's temperature now, not in December in Copenhagen, right now, is well outside its natural fluctuations. Well outside. These aren't Bob Geldorf words. These are words from scientific papers. Well outside. Even if emissions completely stopped now, the world temperature would still increase by 0.5 centigrade by 2050, 40 years. Well within the lifetimes of people here, certainly within the lifetime of our kids. It would increase by 0.5 by 2050 if we stop with one button now. That will leave us within just half a degree of the critical 2 centigrade increase in temperature that will mean the end of Cannes. Either desert or drowned. That's it. No more Great Hall in 2050, no more Film Festival, no more Adfest. The end. We will be left with half a degree of leverage. But the poor, they get the climate change, as the film said, we get the climate control or not. African temperatures will rise between 0.2 and 0.5 degrees every decade in this century. So if you ask about Darfur and the seeming impossibility of stopping this malaise, if you ask about the increasing disturbance in Mali, the growth of the desert in the Sahel, in Botswana, of course look for political rationales to solve it, but it is nothing more than people leaving their normal eating and drinking grounds and moving into other people's areas, creating grotesque instability, conflict and politics. We are about to see, in the words of the Financial Times on Saturday last, the greatest mass migration of humanity in history. They're already moving. Today, now, again, boys and girls are walking across the Sahara Desert to come to us. They're getting into leaking boats. We will see them. We will find them on our holidays this summer in Lampedusa, or Sicily, or Mallorca, or the Canaries. They'd be dead. They'd be on the beaches of Europe. But they'll come for a better life. The average person living in a rich country uses approximately 20 times the energy and 40 times the natural resources as the average African. 25 years ago, in Niger, Northeast Province, the governor of the province, he was being very polite and diplomatic with me. When he got to know me after a couple of hours, he dropped all the diplomatese and he slumped heavily on a naked log in this moonscape. And after a silence, he said, 6 months ago, there were 300 separate languages in this province. Gone. We have no record of these people, no record of their language. You exist through language. Humans exist. It is the great genius of humans. We missed and lost in the cultural repository, in the word hoard, 300 polities, 300 theologies, 300 philosophies, 300 economies, 300 jokes and theatres. Gone. Wiped out. By 2020, the ice at the top of Kilimanjaro will have disappeared for the first time in 11,000 years. And the 16 million people who depend on those ice waters in the Kilgary Basin, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, are on the move now. How can we do development? How can I go to the G8 and say, you promised to do this, you haven't done it, it's worse? It's canoe time. Those of you who aren't English use the famous king who tried to hold back the tide. You can't do it. Rainfall in the Sahel has decreased by 25% in the past 30 years. In Ethiopia, in the highlands, in 1985, I stood on a mountaintop with an old man who said he was called Lion Killer. I saw no trees, I saw no lions. He said, no, when I was a kid, this was jungle. In his lifetime, 30 years. The desert has spread 100 kilometres south in Sudan in the past 4 decades. That will explain the conflicts. About 25% of Africans experience water stress. The demand for water exceeds now the available amount. The Yangtze is down 40%. The Murray is down 40%. What we need to do is prepare now. No messing. This thing is coming. We need to prepare seriously, properly. And we need to reduce. There's a price on this reduction, and given what we've been through and are going through in the economic crisis and the trillions poured at this, what we have to do to prepare and reduce now costs 1.6% of global GDP per annum. Not very much, you would think, 1.6. It's about $1 trillion. But we have just thrown trillions at the world economy, and that's largely why most of you still have a job. Yesterday, the ECB created €500 billion for the banking sector in Western Europe. This can be done, but it will not be done. It will not be done unless those people at Copenhagen are demanded that they do it by us. So this isn't about just being aware through a tick-tick. This is proper, serious, grown-up politic stuff. It's not just about changing your light bulbs to one of those shit things that they sell you now that don't really work. It's not just by stopping buying water from Fiji that's travelled around the world and been held and stored in climatic conditions for 3 years. That's important. That's what the individual does. Charity, very important. One human saying to another, I don't want you to hurt anymore. Critical. But this is where you get political. This is where you don't just vote in the European election, you don't just vote in the general election. This is where you focus talent, energy, and commitment to keeping us going, humans. The animals will survive, particularly marine life. Vegetation will thrive on CO2s. But we'll go. Lovelock thinks that we're sort of a virus that's affecting the planet. The planet will sneeze and shake us off and get on with its life. before I came here, I watched another documentary about NASA and the journalists, or the astronauts who, same thing, who went around the dark side of the moon for the first time. Nobody had prepared them for Earthrise. Nobody had anticipated this. And they had the film of the moment where the astronauts in the little Apollo saw the Earth rise. And there was a shock, and one of them said, "What's that? This glow over the horizon of dark." And the Earth came up. It maybe is one of the most famous photographs we now know in the world. And certainly it's the beginning of what we now call the Green Movement. One of these old men, these astronauts, began to weep again at the thought of it. He said, because in all that great infinity there was no colour. There was grey and a speck of light, but what was the light? And suddenly, this beautiful thing. You see, I like humans. I think we're cool. I don't like when 300 ideas and peoples disappear. I want us to think, and I want us to think our way out of this one that we've got ourselves into. But the cost, in financial terms, easy. But what does it mean to you individually? There's the political commitment. What it means is that we need to cut our emissions in the developed world 80% by 2050. So spare me of servers on YouTube. Spare me EDF with putting a little tick thing there. Get with the program, guys. HSBC, the world's local bank, right? I know Gagan, cool guy. But it's more. 80% by 2050 and by 2020, 30%. So this is where beyond going out into your booth now, beyond putting this sticker on, beyond that, what can you do? You are creatively some of the most intelligent people in the planet gathered in one space. When you can bring that which you do together with that which you are, something phenomenal happens. You're the boys for this. You're the creators. You make these things. You are the most powerful potential political tool. Proper politics, guys. Serious stuff. YouTube, great. Ads, great. What is it that will make these people perfectly aware that being tasked with the responsibility of the planet as politicians, they do this in December? No plans, they come, it's done. That's what you do. And you must leave this room. And you must gather, or go home and think, what the hell, what's powerful, what works, what can I put a metaphoric tsunami, desert storm, to this person's head? What can I make them do to do this? Threaten them with lack of power, subtly but happen. That's what you do. And the last thing I'll ask of you is that you bring to this what Kofi has asked you to do. He's fought many fights on our behalf. So for him, bring to this the commitment he's brought to his life and talking about his continent and trying to make the world ameliorate itself, conduct itself in the elegant manner he so conducts his own life. And there's an old mountain climber called W.P. Murray, Scott, mountaineer. In the 1950s he wrote something about commitment. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence, fate, moves too. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favour all manner of unforeseen incidents, beatings, and material assistance which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. genius, magic, and power in it. That's your job.